Chapter 366. Puck Dash. Several noble artifacts pierced through Karna's body, and blood splattered everywhere. The noble artifacts that were inserted into Karna's body turned into spots of golden light and were retrieved by Gilgamesh into the gate of Babylon. Cough. I see. You hid these noble artifacts in the shadows of other noble artifacts. As expected of the hero king. Karna coughed up blood and said with some shame. Gilgamesh was an archer, after all. If he just threw noble artifacts around, it would be too degrading. Humph. Bastard, this is the price you pay for attacking this king, Gilgamesh said disdainfully. At this moment, a huge dark purple tentacle that looked like an octopus suddenly broke out of the ground. In an instant, Karna was tied up by this huge dark purple tentacle without any resistance and was dragged into the hole in the ground created by the tentacle. Humph. At best, you're just a bastard, Gilgamesh said disdainfully and did not pursue. At this time, Wuming also arrived. Hyunryong, you're late. You didn't see this king's moment of bravery, but seeing that you rushed over to support this king will not argue with you. Gilgamesh looked at Wuming and said arrogantly with squinted eyes. In the eyes of others, Gilgamesh was like a breeze, but at this time, Gilgamesh gave Wuming the feeling of a dog asking for praise from its owner. Yes, so, Your Majesty, has the enemy left? Wuming said as he looked at the hole in the ground. Here, this is the hole. A rat-like tentacle took Karna away. Gilgamesh pointed at the hole in the ground and said disdainfully again. Tentacle? Wuming frowned. He had never heard of an enemy servant that could use tentacles. Thinking of this, Wuming squatted down and looked at the hole in the ground. There was a trace of mucus on the edge of the hole. At this time, Gudatsi and the others hurriedly ran up the mountain. Gudatsi and Sakura Madu were both held by their respective servants. Olga Marie's servant, Wuming, had already run up, so Cuculin was the one holding her. But, let go of me, Olga Marie said to Cuculin behind her with a red face. The reason Olga Marie became like this was because Cuculin lifted Olga Marie by her collar. It's really troublesome. Anna and Mashu have their own masters, and the two goddesses over there won't do such a rough job. I'm the only one left, and they won't let me hug them, so I can only do this. With that, Cuculin loosened his grip and Olga Marie fell to the ground. Of course, she landed on her butt first. Damn it! I'll remember you, Cuculin. Olga Mai stood up and rubbed her buttocks, looking at Cuculin with shame and indignation. On the other hand, Cuculin looked indifferent. After all, he would return to the Martyr's Palace once the Holy Grail War was over. There was no point in looking for trouble. Something unexpected has happened, Wuming said when he saw that the commotion was almost over. Then, everyone looked at Wuming. Wuming then told them what had happened. Gilgamesh and Karna fought. Then, a tentacle took away Karna, who didn't resist, leaving a hole covered in mucus. According to the information we have, the enemy doesn't have any servants with the ability to control tentacles. Olga Marie touched her chin and said, no matter if it's Karna or King Arthur, neither of them has such an ability, and the other servants have either left or are on our side. Wuming analyzed. In other words, Cuculin frowned. Is there a new servant? Gudatsi was surprised. Tachika is right. Judging from Karna's appearance, the man in the green hat must have summoned another servant. Wuming said solemnly. Who the hell is that guy? He can summon an unlimited number of servants. What a troublesome enemy. Olga Marie said with a headache. Could it be the ability of the guy who pretended to be Professor Reef? Matthew raised his small hand and asked. That's right. The other party can provide 7 servants at once, and he has the purpose of destroying the world. It's very likely that he's not human. Gudatsi said excitedly as if she had discovered a new continent. It's not impossible, but I think it's more likely that the other party summoned another servant. Wuming didn't deny Gudatsi's theory, but proposed another possibility. Since the other party can provide 7 servants at once, then it's not impossible to summon another 7 or even more. Assassin is right. We have to prepare for the worst. Olga Marie also nodded. By the way, why did you believe the Red Rider and Redcaster so easily? Aren't you afraid that they lied to you? At this time, Olga Marie asked Wuming. It's not that I don't believe you. I just want to know what you were thinking at that time. Aren't you afraid that they lied to you? Olga Marie asked carefully. After all, they were in a situation where they would die if they made a wrong move. If the other party lied to them, they would be finished. At that time, Olga Marie wanted to ask, but because the other party was there, she didn't have the nerve to ask. After all, Olga Marie was a magician, and it was impossible for her not to be suspicious. I don't think Iskandar will lie. Wu Ming smiled, and then continued to move toward the entrance of the Yuanzhong mountain. Ha! It's that simple? Olga Marie found it hard to believe. Just because they believed that the other party wouldn't lie, they cooperated so easily? I also feel that the king's temperament. I don't think he will lie to us. Matthew thought for a moment and said, Really, do you have a sixth sense? Olga Marie said helplessly. Okay, don't talk nonsense, let's go. Cuculin said, pushing Olga Marie. I know. Let go of me. So, everyone came to the Yuanzhong Mountains Ludong Temple. There was a large passage behind it that led directly to the inside of the big hollow. With the number of Wu Ming and the others, it was a bit inappropriate to take the previous small path. The whole Winterwood city turned into a field of fire, but the strange thing was that the temple was intact, and only some of the surrounding edges were broken. Let's go, Wu Ming said concisely. Just as everyone was about to enter the Ludong temple, Wu Ming immediately held out his hand and stopped everyone. Both Cuculin and Wu Ming looked cautious. What's wrong? What happened? Gudatzi asked. Get ready, there's an enemy. Olga Marie gestured and prepared the magic bullets. Bang! Suddenly, the door of the Ludong temple was violently opened. Chapter 367. Bang! The door of Ludong temple was violently opened, but it wasn't an enemy that came out. Instead, it was an octopus-like monster that was as tall as a person with tentacles. In just a few seconds, countless sea monsters filled the Willow Cave Temple. They kept pouring out of the Willow Cave Temple's entrance and rushed towards Wu Ming and the others. Wah! What is this? It's disgusting. Gudatzi was shocked. There was no need to look closely. These monsters were covered in mucus, and the ground they passed through was wet. Olga Marie didn't say anything, but her legs were trembling. Sakura Madu shrank into Anna's arms in fear. Matthew was also afraid, but he still held on. He immediately raised his shield and stood in front of Gudatzi and Olga Marie. Only Gorgon's sister, Stheno, and the others weren't afraid of these things. These things look like sea monsters. Stheno looked at the tentacle monsters that were advancing and frowned in disgust. Although she wasn't afraid, she still felt disgust. Even the goddess hated these things. These things aren't worth this king's time. I'll leave them to you. With that, Gilgamesh's spiritual form disappeared. It seemed that she also hated these tentacles. Sure enough, these tentacles have a special attack on women. Wu Ming thought. Leave it to me, Anna said and handed Sakura Madu to her sister. Then, she rushed into the sea monsters with her scythe. No one objected. After all, Anna's scythe was more effective against these things that could infinitely regenerate as long as they had magic. The immortal slaughtering blade, Harp. This was the divine sword that had killed the demon Medusa. It could restrain some undying creatures and cause irrecoverable wounds to the opponent. For some inexplicable reason, this sword turned into a scythe and became Anna's weapon when she descended as a lancer. Swish! 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 Just a casual slash was enough to kill a large number of sea monsters in front of him. The power of the undying slaughter blade, Harp, completely killed these sea monsters that should have been able to regenerate. However, it was a little difficult for Anna to deal with the sea monsters that were still pouring out continuously by herself. Boom! A violent explosion came from beside Anna. The sea monster in front of Anna was blown to pieces. Anna turned around and looked behind her. Cuculin raised his staff, which was smoking like a gun shaft that had just been fired. Blow them to smithereens. I don't believe they can recover. Cuculin grinned. However, Anna was a little dissatisfied. Cleaning up these sea monsters was her mission. The enemy should have discovered us. Let's finish them off and leave as soon as possible. Wu Ming tried to persuade Anna. Then, Anna nodded with a frown on her face, but she still looked unhappy. Then I won't hold back, Cuculin said, laughing wantonly. The Loon rune in his hand kept drawing. Countless flames shot at the sea monsters, setting off a series of explosions. Boom, boom, boom. This series of explosions had killed almost 1/3 of the sea monsters. At this time, a few rune stones fell into the center of the remaining sea monsters, producing golden flames. Boom, boom. Then, Cuchulainn looked at Wuming. The two of you should hurry up. Wuming smiled, then threw the Loon rune stone in his hand at the sea monsters again. Ah, are we going to compete? I won't lose. Cuchulainn said excitedly, attacking the sea monsters frantically. In less than 5 minutes, the sea monsters that covered the sky disappeared, leaving behind a faint layer of black dust and traces of various elements. Ice, water, fire, wind, thunder, electricity, earth. Traces of almost all elements could be seen. This made Gudatsi and the others dumbfounded. Especially Olga Marie. That's a rune stone. How could an assassin have so many rune stones? Olga Marie complained crazily. Secrets that could not be known were fatal to Olga Marie. And assassin, where the hell did you get those rune stones from? Why do you have so many types of rune stones? Roman also complained. It's just my ability. Those rune stones were just made when I was bored. Wuming shrugged. However, assassin's damage output is really amazing. Matthew wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. After all, Matthew and the others had been watching from the side. Wuming's damage output was almost higher than Cuchulainn's. Cuchulainn's attack was just a simple red burst of flames, while their Loon rune stones were all kinds of elements, so it was easy to distinguish. The reason why Matthew said this was because of the difference in their ranks. Cuchulainn was a caster, so it was normal for him to have AoE damage. After all, he was a mage canon. However, Wuming was not a caster, but an assassin. As an assassin, he was even more AoE than a caster. It was simply outrageous. I've handed over almost all the offensive runestones I've made in the past. It's normal for them to have such an effect, Wuming said with a smile. He opened a part of the dragoness space in the center of his palm, and threw out a large number of Loon rune stones from his noble phantasm. Because they were in a hurry, Wu Ming bombarded the sea monsters indiscriminately at a speed that even Ma Shu couldn't see clearly. Together with Cuchulainn, the two of them were able to destroy all the sea monsters that could affect the entire Fuyuki city in 5 minutes. There was another reason why Wu Ming used up all the Loon rune stones. After all, they can be made in the future, can't they? These rune stones were made to deal with situations similar to this. Wu Ming smiled. At this time, Gilgamesh lifted his spirit form. As far as actors are concerned, these pieces of trash are not qualified at all, but they let me see a good show. Gilgamesh looked at the debris on the ground and said sarcastically, "If you could help me, it would be much easier." Wu Ming shrugged his shoulders. Humph. This king said that these things are not worthy of this king's help. Gilgamesh glared at Wu Ming fiercely. Yes, then let's go, the enemy is waiting for us, we can't lose the limelight. After dealing with Gilgamesh, Wu Ming said to everyone, "It seems that you are getting bolder and bolder, Hyunryong." Looking at Wu Ming and others who had walked away, Gilgamesh, who fell behind the crowd, said angrily. But then Gilgamesh's anger turned into joy, and he followed the crowd in his spirit form. Seeing your relationship with this king forgives your willfulness, Hyunryong. Thank you very much, king. Wu Ming smiled without turning his head. Soon, Wu Ming and others left the Yuzong Mountain Ludong Temple and came to the Yuzong Mountain Big Cave. Wu Ming, Gilgamesh, Cuchulainn, Matthew, Anna, Stheno, Uriali, Gudatsi, Olga Marie, Sakura Madu. 7 servants and 3 masters, the troops that caused the chaos of this era, arrived at the Demon King's castle. Chapter 368. Looking at the hole filled with magic, Gudatsi and the others couldn't help but tense up. Even Sakura Madu felt the danger inside the big hole and leaned into Anna's arms in fear. Welcome, welcome, welcome everyone. At this time, a voice came from the hole. After hearing this voice, Wu Ming instantly knew who it was. After all, the two of them had a deep hatred for each other. This voice is? Olga Marie was a little excited. Matthew and Gudatsi were also surprised. Even Roman, who turned off the virtual screen to make it easier for everyone to move, appeared again. Everyone looked at the shadow. A figure came out from the shadow of the hole, wearing a green top hat, green clothes, brown hair, and a gentle smile. Lev! Olga Marie shouted excitedly. That's right, it was Lev Lenore Floros. Lev, it's great that you're okay. Olga Marie was about to walk over, but she was stopped by Wu Ming and interrupted. Calm down, Olga, he came from the enemy's base. Olga Marie looked at Wu Ming and then looked at Leviticus. Although her eyes were still anxious, Olga Marie had calmed down and wouldn't defect to the enemy. After Wu Ming's persuasion, Olga Marie was now very calm. If it was the previous Olga Marie, she would have rushed over when she heard Lev's voice. Lev, are you still alive? At this time, Roman asked cautiously. Ah, it's Romani. I remember I should tell you to go to the control room immediately. Why didn't you listen to me? Although Lev still had a gentle face and tone, everyone could feel the anger in his words. Lev. Romani looked at Lev in disbelief. Now, not only Roman, but also Matthew and Godotzi had seen that there was something wrong with Professor Leviticus. Lev. You're not a fake Lev, are you? Olga Marie asked. Leviticus' years of experience and habits made Olga Marie see that, as Wu Ming said, the other party was not a fake Leviticus. Yes, Olga, I am indeed Lev Lenore Floros. Lev smiled and looked at Olga Marie. By the way, you're also working hard, Olga. Lev said. It's okay, but I have a follower. Olga Marie smiled. She also saw that this Professor Lev was a little different from the previous Lev, but there was no doubt that this was the real Leviticus. However, Lev's words made Wu Ming's words. Later, as if confirming Wu Ming's guess, Lev said those words. You actually died a long time ago. Sure enough, Wu Ming frowned. Since Lev said to let Roman go to the control room, Wu Ming guessed that the explosion in the control room was Lev's doing. Now it seemed that he was right. After Lev finished speaking, Olga Marie was a little sluggish and made a puzzled sound. I'm dead, Olga Marie said with some disbelief. That's right, Olga. I put the bomb under your feet. I didn't expect you to still be alive. No, I should say that you're still alive in the state of a spirit, Lev explained to Olga Marie kindly. The bomb. Under my feet. Olga Marie's voice was a little trembling. Yes, Olga, now you can't go back to Chaldea, because your body is dead. There is only one result if you go back to Chaldea, that is, with the disappearance of your consciousness. In an instant, Lev's expression became terrible, and the corners of his mouth almost reached his ears. I am already dead, Olga Marie said with a desperate and trembling voice. Director. Godotzi, Matthew, and Roman were also affected by Lev's words, and looked at Olga Marie sadly. Pa! Suddenly, someone flicked Olga Marie's forehead. It hurts. Olga Marie covered her forehead, and looked at the guy who flicked her forehead with tears in her eyes. You lost hope because of the enemy's words? This is not what my master should be like. Wu Ming looked at Olga Marie's eyes and said helplessly. Humans are a group of creatures with short lives and afraid of death. But because of this, humans will do something when they know that sooner or later they will die. Then, Wu Ming turned to look at Leviticus. Let's not talk about whether this guy is lying to you or not. If we can't restore this singularity, I'm afraid that not only Olga Marie, but also Tachika, Matthew, and even Roman will die. After Wu Ming said that, everyone realized. Yes, if the singularity couldn't be restored, humans would be completely wiped out in a year, and there was no difference between dying now and dying a year later. So, even if it was for themselves in order to save humans they had to win. And didn't I say that I can lend you my shoulder at any time? I like you very much as a master. Wu Ming smiled. I'm sorry. Olga Marie apologized, and wiped the tears from her eyes. I am the director of Chaldea, the master of the famous clock tower Animusphia, one of the 12 monarchs, Olga Marie Asmaret Animusphia, the captain of the team who restored the singularity and saved humanity. How could I fall here? At this time, Olga Marie regained her confidence. Lev betrayed me, but I still have my followers, I still have people I can rely on, I will never fall. Seeing Olga Marie like this, Godotzi and the others breathed a sigh of relief and smiled with relief. Sure enough, assassin, you are a scourge. Looking at Olga Marie who regained her courage, Lev looked at Wu Ming expressionlessly. Then I'm sorry, I especially like to scourge those villains, especially the fake gentleman wearing a green hat. With that, Wu Ming deliberately took off his black hat and made a noble salute. Did you know? I was going to burn down this era and give the Holy Grail to Queen Arthur. I was going to leave this era, but who told me to meet you? Lev didn't care about Wu Ming's mockery and continued speaking calmly. My idea is right, the last master of humanity can't do anything, the dead Olga Marie can't do anything, these tools, followers, can't do anything. Then, Lev showed a terrible expression. The most important thing is you. But, in an instant, Lev returned to his amiable appearance. But it doesn't matter, you're going to die anyway. I'll be merciful and forgive all the things that annoy me. You really dare to say that? Bastard! Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Poochie. Chapter 369. 4 noble phantasms pierced through Lev's body. Gu Dazi couldn't help but turn his head away. No matter what, they were acquaintances after all. He really couldn't bear to look at it. Oh, Hero King is still grumpy. Although Lev was pierced through by Gilgamesh's noble phantasms, he didn't die. Everyone looked and saw Lev's body shaking slightly. This was obviously a projection. I've been in Chaldea for so many years. I can use this kind of projection. Roman and Olga Marie frowned. Lev then looked at Gilgamesh, who was expressionless. Ignoring the fact that assassin is here, Hero King Gilgamesh is considered one of the best tools. I wouldn't dare to come alone. Bastard! Gilgamesh glared. Lev's word tool obviously angered Gilgamesh. I think so too. With your kind, it's unlikely that you'll face us. Wu Ming said sarcastically. Whatever you say. Now, enjoy the feast I've prepared for you. Lev smiled at Wu Ming's sarcasm. After that, Lev's figure disappeared like a screen without electricity. This king will crush that bastard. With that, Gilgamesh's spiritual form disappeared. It seemed that he had entered the Yuanzong mountain. Don't we need to take care of this king? Roman smiled awkwardly. Roman's intention was naturally to be careful. However, Wu Ming shook his head. She's not angry enough to need us to remind her. Gil can help us find the way. You're really relaxed. Gudatsi smiled awkwardly. Anyone who had a willful follower like Gilgamesh would have a headache. However, Wu Ming was very relaxed. I think I know her the best in the world. Don't worry. Nothing will happen. Let's go in quickly. Then, everyone entered the big hole. However, the moment they entered, Wu Ming felt as if he had passed through a layer of film. Then, he found that the people behind him had disappeared, and his surroundings had turned into a maze-like stone wall. Is this an enchantment? Wu Ming frowned. It was probably the enemy's noble phantasm. Wu Ming could feel that it was an enchantment, and its level was not low. This is troublesome. After all, Wu Ming and the others had the advantage of having more people and being able to work together. However, the enemy's unknown servant used a noble relic to separate them, which was quite a disadvantage. It seems that I have to hurry up. Saying so, Wu Ming looked at his gloved left hand. Then, Wu Ming began to explore the labyrinth. It was actually very easy to crack this type of noble phantasm, that was, to get out of the labyrinth. However, in Wu Ming's view, this labyrinth was quite difficult, and he was afraid that it would take a while to crack it. However, it was better to move forward than to wait in place, and Wu Ming could feel a slight connection with Olga Marie. Da, da, da. At this moment, the sound of footsteps in night boots could be heard. Wu Ming looked at the 2 figures in front of him, ready for battle. Altoria and Leviticus. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Chaos Labyrinthos. Lev was the first to speak, looking at Wu Ming with a pleasant expression. Chaos Labyrinthos? Is that the name of this noble phantasm? Wu Ming began to think. Yes, I'll tell you directly, this noble phantasm is held by a monster named Militanos, but then again, it's really easy to control a berserker. Lev directly told Wu Ming the servant who held this noble phantasm and laughed at him. So your purpose of separating us is to defeat us one by one, Lev? Wu Ming smiled indifferently. That's right, but don't be mistaken, I don't want to use King Arthur's sacred sword. Lev admitted generously. I think so. Wu Ming sneered. The feeling between Wu Ming and Lev was comparable to life and death enemies, and they would not let go of the opportunity to kill each other. You didn't leave this era, but stayed. I'm afraid it's because of this, right? Wu Ming asked. Ah yes, I don't know why, but when I think of killing you with my own hands, I feel very happy. Lev grinned and looked at Wu Ming ferociously. Spare. You go and deal with the last master of Chaldea. I specifically left them behind. Lev ordered Altoria. Altoria did not say a word and left step by step. It seemed that as Lev said, she wanted to deal with Wu Ming with her own hands. Wu Ming thoughtfully looked at Artoria, who was leaving. He always felt that Artoria obeyed Lev's orders for another reason. Then let's begin, assassin. Lev laughed ferociously, and his body began to squirm and change. As for the others, Gilgamesh looked at the empty space around him. This seemed to be the center of the labyrinth, and it was the size of a few football fields. Standing opposite Gilgamesh was a spearman in golden armor. A rat that escaped dares to appear in front of this king again? Gilgamesh looked at Karna with disdain. I have no choice. Only I can defeat you, so the master sent me here, Karna said emotionlessly. Then, are you ready to be cut into pieces? Instantly, countless golden ripples appeared behind Gilgamesh. Karna, who was opposite him, also raised the spear in his hand that was transformed from the Brahmastra. Stheno and Euryale looked at the labyrinth where only the two of them were left, and looked around cautiously. At this time, a scarlet eye emerged from the shadows of the labyrinth beside them. Cuchulainn put his staff on his shoulder and looked at the white-haired, red-clothed man with two swords in front of him. He smiled. You must be Archer. How ironic that you're using two swords. Didn't you want to fight me with your staff? The unknown heroic spirit said calmly. You're right. Cuchulainn put his staff in a spear position and pointed it at the unknown servant. Come on, Archer. After that, Cuchulainn rushed forward. The unknown heroic spirit also stomped his feet and faced Cuchulainn. Anna raised her scythe, and the person behind her grabbed onto Anna's cloak in fear, not daring to look at Sakura Madhu. Opposite them, a man with two spears and a mole at the corner of his eye stood there. Dirty, Anna suddenly said. I'm sorry, but this is irresistible. Blame it on the fact that you're women. Gudatsi and the others came to a huge underground cavern. I'm afraid this is the depths of the cavern. It seems that Assassin and the others were separated from us by some unknown means, Olga Marie analyzed. At this time, the sound of iron boots stomping on the ground was heard. The Dark Knight King appeared in front of everyone. Everyone's battle on every battlefield had begun. Chapter 370. Wu Ming looked at the giant flesh pillar with countless huge eyeballs in front of him, and then looked at the black mud-like liquid that it was emitting. He was even more certain that it was related to the origin black mud. It's just like Darius, Wu Ming said in disgust. Although the shape was different, the feeling that this giant flesh pillar gave Wu Ming was the same as the black mud giant that Darius controlled back then. Ha ha ha, this is my true form, demon god pillar Flawlose. The giant flesh pillar made a sound from nowhere. Then it was Leaf's voice, but it was filled with magnetism. I've already heard about you from the other demon god pillars. With just an assassin, you won't be able to defeat me. The demon god pillar Flawlose said confidently. I see. Are all of you demon god pillars a whole? Since Flawlose said, we are waiting, and after learning about Wu Ming from the other demon god pillars, Wu Ming guessed that Flawlose and the other 72 demon god pillars were a whole. That's right. We are a group that is more advanced than an individual human. The demon god pillar swayed. The demon god pillar that pierced the sky gave off a feeling that it would fall. Then let's begin. As he said that, Wu Ming's eyes turned red. In an instant, countless fog emerged from Wu Ming's body, blocking Wu Ming's figure and the giant demon god pillar Flawlose. The mist, dark mist city. On the other side, outside Yuanzhong Mountain, Iskandar carried Zhuge Kongming and drove the Divine Might wheel to the entrance of the Big Hollow. It seems that they have entered the Big Hollow, Iskandar said as he looked at the entrance with traces. But my noble phantasm can only sense Chaldea's master and a group of people. I can't sense the other servants. Zhuge Kongming frowned as he thought of something bad. You're right. It's my old enemy. Suddenly, A young female voice sounded. Judging from his tone, I see. Zhuge Kongming instantly knew who the visitor was. At the top of the mountain, an ancient China chariot was parked there. A blonde woman wearing ancient clothes and holding a feather fan stood on the chariot. Is this someone you know, Kongming? Iskandar asked. My old enemy, Sima Yi. Zhuge Kongming frowned slightly as if he had thought of something. Just as you thought, Master already knew that you would betray him with the Conquest King. Therefore, he has already summoned the 7 servants. The woman named Sima Yi waved her feather fan and said with confidence. Ha ha ha, if that's the case, there's an ambush here. Iskandar was not sad but happy at the thought of an ambush. He started laughing loudly. After all, I've already thought of this situation, so there's nothing to worry about. Zhuge Kongming said calmly. Together with his handsome face, he looked like an aloof Prince Charming. Oh, is that so? Then take this move of mine. As he said that, several tentacles suddenly shot out from the ground and wrapped around Iskandar's divine might wheel. If Wu Ming and the others were here, they would definitely be shocked because they had seen these tentacles before. Ha ha ha, just tentacles. They're not enough to suppress me, the Conquest King. As he said that, Iskandar waved the reins in his hands and prepared to use the divine might wheel's lightning to break free from the tentacles. Moo! The 2 flying-hoofed thunderbolts roared and broke free from the tentacles. However, countless tentacles appeared in an instant, and these tentacles were much thicker than the ones that wrapped around the divine might wheel. They were like giant trees that covered the sky, and the tentacles instantly trapped the divine might wheel that had yet to fly. It's not enough. Ha ha ha. Iskandar's arrogant laughter came from the tentacles. However, these giant tentacles could not trap the Conquest King. Moo! As the flying-hoofed thunderbolts roared, the divine might wheel tore apart the giant tentacles and then rushed into the sky. When did you start to use these things, Sima Yi? Zhuge Kongming said calmly. Hee, of course, you can use illegal means at the right time, and this isn't something that I would do. As if responding to Sima Yi's words, an entrance opened in the group of tentacles that were still dancing on the ground. A man wearing a wizard's robe with protruding eyes and pale skin appeared. Greetings, military advisor. As he spoke, the man bowed to Sima Yi. Let me introduce you, this is Castor, magician. His real name is the French Marshal Gilles de Rais of the British and French war species. Because he is addicted to alchemy, he has the Castor profession. It seemed that this person was the one who controlled the tentacles. Sima Yi did not hesitate to tell Iskandar and Zhuge Kongming the real name of the man who came out from the tentacles. Gilles de Rais, on the other hand, appeared indifferent. As you can see, this is the subordinate that Master assigned to me. Like a little girl who got a toy, Sima Yi smiled. And, I have more than one subordinate. As she said that, a sword light flashed. Moo! Iskandar's flying-hoofed thunderbolt screamed and fell with the divine might wheel. In an emergency, Iskandar grabbed Zhuge Kongming's collar, jumped down from the divine might wheel, and landed firmly on the ground. That sword is? Iskandar, who was also a king, saw that the servant who released the sword light was a king. She had long white hair, rather revealing white clothes, dark skin, and a rainbow-colored sword in her hand. The girl's figure slowly appeared. I am the destroyer of all civilizations. The girl said expressionlessly. This is the Hun emperor who once conquered Europe, known as God's Whip, Attila. Sima Yi introduced again. I have another subordinate, but I don't think it's necessary, so I let her move freely. Sima Yi said casually. How arrogant. This is not like you, Sima Yi. Zhuge Kongming mocked Sima Yi. Hee, other people aside, Attila with the war god's sword is enough to defeat you. Do you want to try? Sima Yi said provocatively and looked at Iskandar. Ha ha ha. That's exactly what I want. To be able to fight against the famous military commander Sima Yi, Marshal Gilles de Rais of France, and the Hun emperor with the title of God's Whip, this is a rare opportunity. Iskandar laughed and did not look timid after losing the divine might wheel. Then let me show you my king's road. After a few seconds, the clamor outside Yuanzhong Mountain was gone and it was completely quiet. However, the battle was still going on in a place that could not be seen. Chapter 371. On Anna's side, Anna and the guy with the dual spears were entangled together. Because the other party had promised in his name that he would never harm Sakura Madu, a young child, Sakura Madu stood in place and watched Anna and the other party fight. Delamudo Odina. Sakura Madu said with some worry. Of course, she wasn't worried about the dual spear knight called Delamudo, but she was worried about Anna. Delamudo Odina was the first knight of the Red Branch Knights. He was related to Fergus, Cuchulain, and even Sira. If Wuming was here, he would probably be able to recognize Delamudo. The most important thing was that the other party had dual spears and dual swords. Sakura Madu, who had read about the Red Branch Knights, knew that Delamudo's dual swords and dual spears had great power. They were engraved with special Lune runes. Judging from the current situation, Delamudo was summoned as a lancer, which made Janto Sakura heave a sigh of relief. After all, compared to dual swords, Delamudo with dual spears was easier to deal with. But it was only easier to deal with. At this moment, Delamudo and Anna were fighting using long and short spears. The red spear was called the magic-breaking red rose, Gi Dirge, and the yellow short spear was called the sure-extinguishing yellow rose, Gi Bid. The magic-breaking red rose, Gi Dirge, S ability was actually similar to the sure-extinguishing rune, Rulebreaker. It specialized in dealing with magic items and techniques, and could completely eliminate magic. The sure-extinguishing yellow rose, Gi Bid, had the power to cause damage that couldn't be recovered from this spear. This was also somewhat similar to Anna's scythe, but Anna's scythe also targeted immortality, which the sure-extinguishing yellow rose, Gi Bid, didn't have. But because of this, the confrontation between Anna and Delamudo made Sakura Madu nervous. Delamudo was a hero who had been famous for a long time, and Anna was an immature young Medusa. In terms of close combat, Anna was quite at a disadvantage. And for monsters, the hero Delamudo had a suppressive effect on Anna. This was a characteristic of monsters that should be defeated by heroes. In simple terms, the opponent that Lev chose for Anna was really good at restraining her. In just a few rounds, wounds that couldn't be healed appeared on Anna's body. Fortunately, Anna was cautious. These wounds were only minor and did not hinder her from fighting. Although you're a lancer, you don't have superb martial arts, and your spirit base is also quite immature. It's inevitable that you'll be at a disadvantage if you fight with me. It's better to surrender as soon as possible. Delamudo began to persuade. It could only be said that he was a knight with a profound knighthood. He was still thinking about the enemy during the battle. But this was also the reason why Anna and Sakura Madu were still children. Will you let us go if we surrender? Anna just asked Delamudo back. This. Although my lord ordered to kill the enemy, but seeing that your master is still a child, I will plead for her. Delamudo said awkwardly. He really couldn't make the decision on behalf of his master, but he could still plead for mercy. No need to say more. Even if Anna was summoned as a child, she also understood that the weak were prey to the strong, and the weak were lambs to be slaughtered. If that's the case, then I don't need to hold back. As he said that, it seemed that Delamudo was really holding back. Whether it was the craftiness of his spear technique or the speed of his spear, it was more than twice as fast as before. In an instant, a few more wounds appeared on Anna's body. Gradually, these wounds began to affect Anna's performance. Bam! Anna was sent flying and fell in front of Sakura Madu. Sakura Madu quickly supported Anna. Sister Anna, are you okay? Sakura Madu looked at the wounds all over her body that couldn't be healed. She couldn't bear it. You've already lost. After you kill yourself, I will bring your master away safely and plead for her. Delamudo walked in front of Anna and pointed the tip of his spear at Anna. Anna looked at Sakura Madu and seemed to have made up her mind. Suddenly, Anna's eyes became rectangular in pain. Then, Anna looked at Delamudo. What? After seeing Anna's glowing eyes, Delamudo knew that he was in trouble. This was at least a gemstone-level magic eye. However, just as he was about to shoot Anna, he realized that he couldn't move. I see, Gorgon's goddess. Delamudo gave up struggling. He looked at his body that was turning into stone starting from his legs and smiled. I wish you success. Although what I said was a bit disrespectful, but this time, the master can't let him go no matter what. Delamudo said with a determined gaze. He is a human, an enemy of our heroic spirits. Then, Delamudo completely turned into a stone statue. Then, Anna's wounds began to heal. Now Anna understood that Delamudo wanted to be killed from the beginning, not because he betrayed the master, but because the master had to betray him. After Anna, who didn't like to use the magic eye, used the petrifying magic eye, Delamudo didn't resist and left the stage. After all, even if he couldn't move, he could still struggle. Anna felt that Delamudo gave up struggling after he felt that he couldn't move at first and accepted his defeat. As the military advisor said, Delamudo lost. The voice of a girl that didn't sound like a human's voice came. Then, Anna and Sakura Madu began to feel dizzy and fell to the ground. This is poison. Anna's eyes began to lose focus. It was a poison that could affect servants. Then Anna tried to look at Sakura Madu. To be able to affect servants, it was a poison that could kill Sakura Madu, who was just a human girl. Don't worry, I don't have the idea of poisoning my prey. With that said, the owner of the voice walked toward Sakura Madu. Anna tried hard to look at that person, but because of the poison, she couldn't concentrate. In short, it was like being short-sighted. She couldn't see that person's face. The only thing that could be seen was the other party holding up the cherry blossoms and smiling. What a delicious food, I won't be polite. Then, Anna's eyes turned black, and she completely fainted. The battle outside continued, but it had nothing to do with Lev, who was the master of the new 7 knights, and Wu Ming, who was the backbone of the joint forces of the old servants. Feeling the thick fog that constantly destroyed his body, the demon god pillar Flawless sneered. Do you think you can trap me with this enchantment alone? Too naive. Flawless swayed and stood in the middle of the empty city of London full of harmful fog, and said wantonly, I do have the idea of cutting off the connection between you and your servants, but this enchantment is not omnipotent. It can't trap you for a long time. Wu Ming said calmly. In that case, this will be your hiding place. Dragon of origin. Flawless said, releasing the acid fog that corroded Wu Ming's enchantment. When the acid fog was about to approach Wu Ming smiled. Flawless, I heard that you are the demon god pillar in charge of intelligence, right? Wu Ming asked. So what? Flawless said. His actions did not stop, and Wu Ming was completely wrapped in the black fog. Then have you heard of the Savor Job class? Chapter 372. In the center of the city of London filled with white fog, on the towering demon god pillar, countless eyes were blinking. At the same time, a black fog that represented an ominous color constantly emerged from the demon god pillar, quickly diffusing in the city of London, trying to swallow everything. And at this moment, a little golden light vaguely flashed from the black fog. Boom! As if something had exploded, a gap was opened in the black fog, and a golden light shot straight up into the sky. What? Accompanied by Lev's magnetic voice, the demon god pillar also made an indescribable scream. Let me praise your courage first. Demon god pillar Flawless, after knowing my identity, you should have run away immediately. After all, as an assassin, I can't chase you. Wu Ming's voice came from the golden light pillar. But you didn't. You thought that I am now a clone, and you can kill me. I have to say, you are extremely stupid. The golden light disappeared, and Wu Ming's figure appeared. She had short black hair, red pupils, pure white clothes with golden patterns, and a golden headband that looked like an olive branch was firmly placed on her head. That's right. This was Wu Ming's savior. This was also the reason why Wu Ming said that he was also a trump card in front of Olga, Marie, and the others. How is this possible? Without the Holy Grail, how can you change your class? Flawless said with some horror. Indeed, Wu Ming needed the help of the Holy Grail to change his class. During the battle with Darius, because Wu Ming was a class card at that time, his nature was not the same as that of a servant's spiritual body, so Wu Ming's body in the root could affect Wu Ming at that time. Now, because Wu Ming was a servant summoned by the Holy Grail, his spiritual base was different from the spiritual base materialized by the class card. Therefore, he still had to rely on the power of the Holy Grail, just like when he was in Tulifas. And Flawless, who transformed into the demon god pillar, knew this, so he was not afraid of Wu Ming. After all, the Holy Grail had been stuffed into Artoria's heart by him with the power of the demon god. Unless Wu Ming experienced a heart gouging, he could not change his class through the Holy Grail. Of course, Wu Ming did not do anything like heart gouging to Artoria. Wu Ming was able to change his class because of the Holy Grail. After all, Wu Ming had a portable treasury that could carry all the treasures in the world with him. Why would he need to do anything else? Gilgamesh's treasure vault, of course. This was also the reason why Wu Ming wanted to meet up with Gilgamesh first. When Wu Ming first came to Fuyuki City, the reason why he wanted to summon young Jill was to borrow the Holy Grail in his treasure house. After all, Wu Ming could totally cancel his promise with young Gil. Cough cough, break the promise. After all, if it were Wu Ming himself or some other powerful profession, he could have completed the mission of coming to this world alone. However, Wu Ming was an assassin, a spiritual base Wu Ming Jack the Ripper, which made things a little awkward. This could be considered as Wu Ming's punishment for cheating. However, this awkwardness was not because Jack the Ripper's spiritual base was weak, but because it was not right. Fog Knight's murder, intelligence erasure, inherent enchantment dark mist, the mist, and Mary Ripper the lady, were all powerful skills and noble artifacts. However, in the face of something like the Black Mud, it was inevitable that it would be a little difficult to resist. It was precisely because of this that Wu Ming chose to summon young Gil. This way, he wouldn't owe young Gil anything. However, who would have thought that a woman would appear? Fortunately, this queen was easy to deal with. Cough cough. Easy to get along with. After all, they were both Gilgamesh, and they both had the Gate of Babylon. They both had the Holy Grail in their treasure vaults, so there was no difference between them. Because he didn't expect the enemy to attack so quickly, and because Wu Ming didn't have time to ask Gilgamesh for the Holy Grail, he was sent flying by Artoria's Holy Sword Light Cannon. Of course, because Gilgamesh's Holy Grail was not the Holy Grail of the Holy Grail War, it was reasonable to say that Wu Ming shouldn't be able to use this Holy Grail to change his profession. This required Wu Ming's command incantation on the back of his left hand that belonged to Gilgamesh. The command incantation was given by the Holy Grail of the Holy Grail War, so the two were connected. In this way, Wu Ming used the command incantation and the Uruk's Holy Grail to successfully change his profession. This was the special condition that Wu Ming told Olga, Marie, and the others before. Without these two special conditions, the result of changing his profession would not be born. As for how I successfully changed my profession, you don't need to know. Wu Ming looked at the demon god pillar Floros with a benevolent look. It could only be said that Floros' intestines were green with regret. If he knew this would happen, he would have left quickly. However, there were no ifs in all of this, so Floros still had to bite the bullet. Damn it! You're just a servant. See how I'll destroy you. With Lev's angry roar, the demon god pillar also made an indescribable sound. Then, countless fog rushed toward Wu Ming, followed by countless heat rays from the eyes on the demon god pillar. Swoosh! With a flash of a sword, the attacking fog and heat rays were all scattered. The sword continued to move forward and attacked the demon god pillar, leaving a deep burn mark, as if an undead creature had touched the holy light. Ah! What is this? Lev screamed, and the demon god pillar kept squirming to get rid of the pain. Wu Ming, on the other hand, was holding a platinum holy sword that looked like Artoria's Excalibur. Its name is Savior's Divine Sword. How is it? It's not bad, right? Wu Ming looked at the demon god pillar in the air. The sword that just broke the fog and heat rays was from Savior's Divine Sword. Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! Lev's voice was crazy, and it began to sound a little different from Lev's voice. By the way, now you should feel the malice of the surrounding air, space, and the whole world toward you, right? As if to verify Wu Ming's words, Floros' body began to gradually collapse. Nemesis of Evil was an EX level skill, and Wu Ming also hit the demon god pillar just now. Even if Floros had the black soil in his body, it was not easy. How is this possible? I'm the king's subordinate, and you want to defeat me as a servant. Oh! Demon god pillar Floros began to scream, and the indescribable screams filled the entire city of London. At this time, Wu Ming raised the Savior's Divine Sword. The tip of the Savior's Divine Sword began to gather a heat source, and the heat source gradually became larger, forming a constantly growing sun. So, from the beginning, you have no chance of winning, demon god pillar Floros. After that, Wu Ming waved the Savior's Divine Sword. Chapter 373. The place where Wu Ming and Lev were originally located was shattered, and Wu Ming appeared in the same place. When Wu Ming first entered, he was wearing a black trench coat and a black hat, and when he came out, he was wearing a white coat with golden patterns and an olive branch headdress. Of course, the olive branch headdress was transformed by Collis. Wu Ming, who came out of the enchantment, was also holding a green figure who was struggling to survive. That person was Lev, who turned into the demon god pillar. At that moment, Lev's green hat was gone, and his green clothes were tattered, and he looked like he was tortured to death. But in fact, Lev just ate Wu Ming's attack. Back to the topic. Wu Ming's divine blade of salvation only knocked Leaf back to his original form. Knocking back Leaf Flawless was the demon god pillar. It was not that Wu Ming was merciful, but it was as if the two were not completely the same person. After demon god pillar Floros was defeated, Lev appeared automatically. Looking at Lev, his spirit had been completely collapsed by the world. Lev's human personality had disappeared, and now Lev was just a medium for demon god Floros. Looking at Lev like that, Wu Ming shook his head. It's a disaster to keep him alive. Although his spirit collapsed like a vegetable, his body could still summon the demon god pillar with a specific summoning method. Noble and powerful, wise and kind, I will incarnate a miracle and lead the world to the dawn. After saying that, Wu Ming entered the magician's incarnation state. Immediately afterward, Wu Ming made a slight stroke, and several lune runes appeared. At that moment, Lev's whole body was burning. After being strengthened by the magician's incarnation, the flame produced by the lune runes was a holy white flame. In just a few seconds, Lev's body was burned out, leaving nothing behind. Since the master is here, I don't know if these servants summoned by Lev will disappear. After all, because of the mutation of the Great Holy Grail, even if the master disappeared, they would not disappear. At that moment, the entire labyrinth began to shake as if it was about to be shattered. Kill! Wu Ming looked in a certain direction. Wu Ming, who became the savior, could be said to be the closest to the master's strength. Wu Ming could clearly feel the destruction of the space. It seems that Gil is also serious. Wu Ming laughed. In truth, Gilgamesh should have done this long ago. The only reason he used the good separation sword now was probably because he saw that he couldn't take down Karna, and that Karna's frenzied attacks forced him to take him seriously. Wu Ming just waited. Originally, Wu Ming wanted to use the sword, but since someone else did it for him, he didn't need it anymore. Soon, along with a series of spatial transformations, the space around Wu Ming changed. The surrounding labyrinth turned into a super big underground hole, and in that big hole, there were more than a dozen servants including Wu Ming. But because the big hole was too vast, some servants were far away from each other. Wu Ming looked at the servant group closest to him. Riley was sitting on the shoulder of a little giant with horns, while Stheno was taking care of the unconscious Anna and Sakura Madu behind the little giant. Wu Ming naturally saw that Anna and Sakura Madu were poisoned, and it was a very powerful poison. So Wu Ming quickly went to Anna and Sakura Madu's side. Have you finished off your opponent? Stheno said in boredom. Although Stheno's tone was light, Wu Ming could feel that he was worried about the unconscious Anna. So Wu Ming didn't say anything. Golden ripples appeared out of thin air, and 2 bottles of potions fell from it. It was an antidote from the Yggdrasil, world tree, and it was the highest level. Let them drink it. Wu Ming quickly handed 1 bottle to Stheno and let Anna drink it. Then, he helped Sakura Madu up, opened her mouth, and poured it down little by little. Stheno also quickly poured the antidote into Anna's mouth. After seeing Anna and Sakura Madu's expressions soften, Wu Ming got up and went to the bullhorn giant. Because of Wu Ming's arrival, the bullhorn giant seemed a little irritable. Quiet down. Astrios. He's one of us. Riley, who was on the bullhorn giant's shoulder, patted Astrios's head. Then, Astrios calmed down. Wu Ming understood. This should be the Militanos that Lev mentioned. I won't ask why this big guy is with you. You must be an enemy, right? Wu Ming asked Riley, who was sitting on Asterio's shoulder. He did not care about Asterio's situation. Yes, that's right. She poisoned my sister and almost turned her master into food, Riley explained. Food. In other words, she almost ate Sakura Madu. In front of Wu Ming and the others, there was a monster woman with long horns on her forehead. She wore a revealing thin dress and held a large blue wine gourd in her hand. Ah, looks like my master has failed. The monster woman wasn't nervous at all. She smiled casually. Fear the one with wings. Evil people and powerful people are all afraid of me with wings. My wings will bring you curses. Evil people can't hit me. Wu Ming disappeared as soon as he finished speaking. This time, Wu Ming didn't stay behind at all. He instantly came to the monster woman's side. The divine blade of salvation appeared in his hand out of thin air. Wu Ming slashed at the monster woman's neck heavily. The monster woman's head was instantly lopped off. At this moment, the head flew towards Wu Ming, who was extremely close. It opened its bloody mouth and bit towards Wu Ming's neck. Bang! Wu Ming sent the head flying with a punch. The head fell heavily on the ground and made a loud noise. Wu Ming looked at the monster woman, who was still alive even after her head was chopped off. He had really become a monster. What a powerful skill. It reminds me of Lai Guang. The monster woman's head smiled at Wu Ming. You're the one who surprised me. You didn't die immediately even after your head was chopped off. I can only say that you're worthy of being Shitendaji, the great monster of Japan. That's right, the demon woman was none other than Shitendaji. A monster that used poison and didn't die even after its head was chopped off. It held a wine gourd in its hand and ate humans. The only one he could think of was one of the three great monsters of Japan, Shitendaji. Ah, as expected, I'm too famous. I was actually discovered so quickly. Shitendaji spoke as if she was chatting with an old friend. Wu Ming didn't do anything else because he could see that Shitendaji was struggling at death's door. She wasn't far from dying. You're really optimistic, Wu Ming said uninterestedly. Hee, after all, I'm a monster. But it's a bit sad to die in the same way as you. Shitendaji smiled and then moved her body. This is an order that Master gave a long time ago using the command seal. Run as much as you want. In an instant, countless amounts of poison wreaked havoc. Chapter 374. In an instant, Shitendaji's wine gourd exploded. The wine gourd was like a bottomless pit, releasing endless seven-colored venom. The seven-colored venom exuded a terrifying aura. Although Wu Ming could resist it, Wu Ming didn't think that the servants and masters inside the big hole could resist it. Run as fast as you can, Shitendaji's head smiled, then disappeared with his body. Only the large amount of venom was left behind. The most important thing was that the venom was still spreading at an alarming speed. Wu Ming used his phoenix avatar that had not yet exited and came to Anna and Sakura Madu's side. Let's get out of here quickly. Even servants can't resist this venom, Wu Ming said while carrying Sakura Madu. Stheno carried Anna, and Astrios stretched out his hand and let Stheno stand on it. Then Astrios grabbed Stheno and Anna in one hand, and carried Uriali on his shoulder, and began to escape toward the big hole's exit. Wu Ming jumped on Astrios' shoulder, handed Sakura Madu to Uriali, and then took out an item from Golden Ripple and gave it to Uriali. Put it on Astrios, and then infuse it with magical power. It can speed up your movement. Silent Wonder didn't think that a big guy like Asterios could move that fast. In the end, Venom still caught up to him and forced him to leave the stage. Understood, then we'll go first. Uriali was serious, which was rare for her. After Wu Ming left Astrios' shoulder, she activated the item. Oh! Astrilius seemed to have felt the blessing of this power, so he roared and quickly left the place. Wu Ming looked behind him. Not only the venom, but the ground and even the air were dyed with seven-colored venom. As expected of a monster, it left a lot of trouble even after death. Wu Ming looked helplessly at the circle behind him, then resolutely rushed toward Gilgamesh's position. Because of his phoenix avatar, Wu Ming arrived at Gilgamesh's side in just a few seconds. Because the source of the venom was Wu Ming's side, Gilgamesh's side was not affected by the venom yet. After arriving at Gilgamesh's side, Wu Ming first used magical power to burn the venom on his body. Humph! You're late, Hyunryong. Gilgamesh sat on a luxurious exclusive seat brought over from the villa. He propped up his chin with one hand and rested his other hand on the seat. He tilted his head and looked at Wu Ming. Although it was a complaint, Wu Ming could feel Gilgamesh's happiness from his tone. Not only was Wu Ming happy, but he was also happy to meet a strong opponent. Wu Ming looked at Gilgamesh, who was sitting on the chair. There was a hole in his chest, and the spirit core that was supposed to be his heart was gone. By relying on his skill to act alone, Gilgamesh wouldn't disappear immediately after his spirit core shattered. This king was a little careless and was stabbed by that guy's Godslayer spear. Gilgamesh smiled indifferently and waved his hand. And Karna, who was nowhere to be seen, had undoubtedly left the arena. Really, I told you not to be careless. It seems that you can't do anything without me. Wu Ming didn't feel sad. Sadness would be an insult to Gilgamesh, so he teased Gilgamesh. You really dare to say that, Hyunryong? Gilgamesh glared at Wu Ming. However, Gilgamesh's anger turned into joy. Forget it. This king was happy on this trip, so I won't argue with you. Gilgamesh smiled and closed his eyes. Clatter. At this moment the sound of chains came. Immediately afterward, Gilgamesh felt something familiar touching his cheek. Gil, it was the voice of his best friend. Gilgamesh suddenly opened his eyes. A golden chain was on Gilgamesh's body, and the chain touched Gilgamesh's cheek. If it's you, this should be your wish. Wu Ming stretched out his arm, and the chain stretched out from Wu Ming's arm. Sure enough, you two know this king best. After that, Gilgamesh turned into pure magic and disappeared, leaving the chair behind. It's nice to meet you again. Goodbye, Gil. The chain made a pleasant female voice. To meet me in Enkidu again, this is your wish, Gil. The chain once again wrapped around Wu Ming's arm, and with a flash of golden light, the chain was hidden. Then, Wu Ming went to the place where Cuculin and the unknown white-haired red-clothed servant were. When he came to the two, they were sitting down and chatting. You've seen your brother. Seeing Wu Ming's arrival, Cuculin greeted him warmly. What's going on with you two? Wu Ming was stunned by the scene. This guy is a traitor, and his purpose is to repair this singularity. Cuculin pointed to the white-haired red-clothed servant. It's just for work reasons. The white-haired red-clothed servant said expressionlessly. Looking at the approaching blue circle, Wu Ming looked at the two. Are you not going to leave? He could see that the two were not going to leave and were ready to leave. You've defeated that demon god pillar, so you don't need me anymore. Also, I made a bet with this guy to see who can't hold on and leave first. Cuculin smiled. Oh yes, this guy told me about the demon god pillar. Cuculin pointed to the white-haired red-clothed servant. The main enemy has been killed, so I should go back. The white-haired red-clothed servant continued to say expressionlessly. What? You're cheating. Cuculin said excitedly. Humph, it's your fault for being stupid, Cuculin. The white-haired red-clothed servant smiled proudly. When they came to the big hole, the white-haired red-clothed servant told Cuculin his purpose. He said that the enemy had been killed, and there was no need to fight anymore. After that, he saw Shitendaji's wine gourd explode, and the whole big hole began to become a poisonous hole, so he made a bet with Cuculin to see who could hold on first. After knowing that the mastermind behind the enemy had been killed, Cuculin, who was not satisfied with the fight, said that of course, he could fight with him. That was what led to the current scene. Cough. You're bluffing. Cuculin spat out blood and looked at the white-haired red-clothed servant rather unhappily. The poison that had invaded here began to erode the two's spiritual base. Cough. I told you, it's your fault for being stupid. The white-haired red-clothed servant also spat out blood and said weakly. Soon, the two turned into blue magic particles and disappeared. What a bunch of idiots. Wu Ming shook his head helplessly and looked at the last servant's gathering place in the big hollow. The black holy sword slashed on the white holy shield, which was extremely harsh in this big hole with only a few people. Chapter 375. Matthew. Gudatsi watched from a distance. The aftermath of the clash between the holy sword and the holy shield made her unable to get close. Olga Marie frowned and looked around worriedly. Venom was almost here. Damn it! King Arthur has been entangling Matthew. We can't retreat at all. Olga Marie had suggested that they meet up with the others as soon as they left Chos Labyrinthos, the eternal maze of the inherent enchantment. However, Artoria was not one of them, and she would not let go of the prey in front of her. In this way, Until Shatendaji's wine gourd was activated and began to turn the big hole into a poisonous area, Matthew was still resisting Artoria. Ah, that guy. Does he want to drag us down with him? Olga Marie scratched her head and said irritably. Matthew has already taken 3 of King Arthur's noble phantasm, and now he's barely holding on. Gudazzi looked at Matthew, who was already a little unstable, and said worriedly. Gudazzi and Olga Marie were only humans, and they could not interfere with the battle between Artoria and Matthew. Just when the two were at their wits' end, a white gold figure rushed past Gudazzi and Olga Marie. It was Wu Ming. Assassin? Gudazzi and Olga Marie were both surprised, and then they were happy. Wu Ming nodded to the two, and then rushed to Matthew and Artoria in an instant, holding the sword of salvation and cutting them apart. Assassin. Senpai. Great. You're here. Matthew weakly leaned on his shield and looked at Wu Ming. Gudazzi and Olga Marie saw this and quickly ran to Matthew's side, supporting the weak Matthew. Artoria, on the other hand, stood there quietly without saying anything. Wu Ming took out a red recovery potion from the golden ripple and tossed it to Gudazzi. This is a recovery medicine. Give it to Matthew later, Wu Ming instructed. Gudazzi caught the recovery potion in a panic and nodded solemnly. Olga Marie, who was supporting Matthew, shouted seriously and nervously. Assassin, this place is about to become a poison zone. We need to leave quickly. After all, Olga Marie was also a first-class magician. She could still see that the poison that was close to everyone was a noble relic poison that was effective against servants. You guys leave first, Wu Ming said, raising his hand in the direction of Olga, Marie and the others. Gate. Following the recitation of the spell, a dark purple hole appeared under the feet of Olga and Marie. This was the long-awaited portal. Wah! Along with the sound of panic, the 3 of them successfully fell in. Don't worry, the other side of the portal is safe at the foot of the Yuanzong mountain. I'll be there in a while. Wu Ming said to the portal, but he didn't know if Olga Marie and the others could hear him. Snap! Wu Ming snapped his fingers, and the portal closed. Lia, long time no see. Wu Ming smiled at Artoria. Artoria picked up the mask that fell on the ground and put it on her face. Come on, if you want to restore this era, you must defeat me. Artoria said and raised the black holy sword. Whether it was Wu Ming or Artoria, both of them knew that the Holy Grail was the key, and the Holy Grail had been placed in Artoria's heart by Leviticus. The Great Holy Grail in Winterwood City was not the huge female sculpture that Wu Ming obtained from the Battle of the 14 Horsemen, nor was it the cup-shaped Holy Grail in Gilgamesh's treasure vault that Wu Ming had used. It was a rather complicated technique. The reason why Wu Ming saw a Holy Grail in Artoria's heart before was just the manifestation of the Holy Grail technique. But after Lev's series of manipulations, the Holy Grail technique had turned into a Holy Grail. In short, the Great Holy Grail in Winterwood City was no longer a technique. When Wu Ming transformed into a saver, he noticed the strangeness of the Holy Grail through his connection with the Holy Grail. The Holy Grail in Artoria's heart was the product of the combination of the Holy Grail brought by Lev and the Holy Grail in Winterwood City. You obey Lev because you want to maintain this singularity, right, Lia? Wu Ming did not continue the topic of Artoria. Instead, he talked about something else. Yes, that's right, Artoria admitted frankly. It was also when Wu Ming changed his class through the Holy Grail that Wu Ming realized this. This era was a singularity caused by the Holy Grail, but the Holy Grail would also maintain this singularity. This was also why Chaldea wanted to recover the Holy Grail. Because after the Holy Grail was recovered, this era would change back due to the self-recovery of the world. And the reason why they wanted to maintain this singularity, Wu Ming thought it was because of Leviticus. Even if I don't accept his identification, other servants will become the ones who hold the Holy Grail in this era. In that case, it would be better for me to protect the Holy Grail, Artoria said lightly. Sure enough, even if King Arthur became a Dark King, he was still the same King Arthur, just a little bit colder. This was also the reason why he kept chasing after Matthew. That child has not fully inherited Galahad's power. She is too young. She must be trained. I knew it. Wu Ming could not help but laugh. Sure enough, because he did not like Matthew, who had power but could not use it, King Arthur chose to train her. That was why he kept pestering Matthew and did not let them leave. Sure enough, the Holy Grail War is a sinful consciousness. The first meeting between you and me after a long time ended in this way. Wu Ming said as he raised the blade of salvation. In the big hole that had completely turned into a poisonous area, black and golden light shone. Outside Yuzo Mountain, Astralis carried Uriali, Stheno, Anna, and Sakura Madu and met Olga Marie and the others at the foot of the mountain. But it was not really a meeting, because Astralis did not plan to run down the mountain. Stop at last. Astelius. You are so naughty, Uriali reprimanded Astelius in annoyance. I'm sorry. Astralis stuttered as she apologized. Because the item Wu Ming gave me was too useful, Astralis could not stop at all. She only stopped when she was about to reach the foot of the mountain. She just happened to run into Olga Marie and the others who had been teleported by Wu Ming through the portal. Senpai, are you okay? Matthew asked worriedly as he supported Godotzi, whose eyes were already swollen. I'm fine, Matthew. Godotzi shook her head and smiled at Olga Marie. Matthew is over there. Olga Marie pointed at Matthew helplessly. Wasn't he completely out of his mind? Matthew was even more worried now. Thank you so much, leader. Godotzi smiled awkwardly. Senpai, let's go and rest first. Sorry for being rude. Matthew bowed slightly to everyone and then helped Godotzi to a nearby rock. You guys escaped too. Is that so? Stheno got down from Astralis and said to Olga Marie. Yeah, assassins seem to have used some kind of spatial magic to teleport us here. Is that so? That means that man is still in the poisonous area? Calculating the time, the big hole in Yuzo Mountain had almost completely turned into a poisonous hole. Asterisk boom. Asterisk suddenly, there was a huge explosion. Yuzo Mountain exploded. Chapter 376. Boom! Suddenly, Yuanzong Mountain exploded. From the middle of Yuanzong Mountain to the top, it was completely destroyed by the explosion. Due to the intensity of the explosion, not many rocks fell to the foot of the mountain. Instead, most of the rocks that fell were small stones. What? What happened? Godotzi was shaken to the point that he was completely awake. Senior, Yuanzong Mountain exploded. Matthew said awkwardly. Godotzi looked at Yuanzong Mountain in a daze and realized that it had indeed disappeared. It must be caused by Assassin's battle with King Arthur. Olga Marie frowned. Wu Ming could not return safely from an explosion of this magnitude. Don't worry. His strength is far beyond your imagination. Stheno and Uriali smiled mysteriously and said to Olga Marie in unison. After all, Stheno and Uriali had accidentally found out about Wu Ming's true identity. I hope so. Olga Marie sighed. At that moment, a figure walked out from the forest at the foot of Yuanzong Mountain. However, this figure was in a sorry state. Zhuge Kongming? Olga Marie called out this figure's name. What happened? Isn't the Conquest King with you? Seeing Zhuge Kongming's sorry state, Olga Marie had a bad feeling. The Conquest King has already left, Zhuge Kongming said calmly. Then, he told everyone what had happened. After Iskandar activated his Ionioi Hiteroi, he brought himself, Zhuge Kongming, Sima Yi, Gilda Ray, and Attila into the inherent barrier. Then, with the support of Zhuge Kongming's military skills, Iskandar led his army and showed a crushing state as they crushed the enemy. Soon, in the chaotic battle, Gilda Ray and the sea demons he summoned and controlled were all killed. In any case, Sima Yi was a rider. Thus, he managed to survive on the battlefield with his chariot. Sima Yi felt bitter in his heart. It wasn't that he couldn't win, but that he didn't have an army. Although Sima Yi was summoned as a rider, she was the same as Zhuge Kongming. Both of them had strategist skills and noble relics. In other words, both of their noble relics were almost the same. However, in the face of tens of thousands of enemy troops, Sima Yi wanted to use Zhuge Kongming's empty fort strategy. But unfortunately, he didn't even have a fort. Sima Yi had no choice but to use his relic to give Iskandar's army a debuff. Subsequently, Sima Yi used the command incantation to summon Attila, who had been killing non-stop in the army, to summon the war god's sword. The enemy servant has a command spell that can control other servants? Olga Marie was surprised. Although it didn't sound nice, it was too bold to let a tool manage another tool. After all, there was a possibility of a backlash. If the servant was fed up with its master, it could use the command spell to order the servant it controlled to kill its master. After all, the command spell was in the servant's hands. The most important thing was that the servant being controlled was the European destroyer, Attila the Hun, who was known as the Whip of God. The rainbow-like lightsaber instantly wiped out almost 2/3 of the entire Ionioi's army, Zhuge Kongming said in a heavy tone. There was no doubt that Iskandar had been defeated. If it were not for the Ionioi Hitairoi protecting Iskandar and Zhuge Kongming, the two of them would have returned to the Martyr's Palace when Attila released the first wave of noble artifacts. After that, before he was completely defeated, Iskandar used his own power to send Zhuge Kongming out of his inherent barrier. As soon as Zhuge Kongming came out of the inherent barrier, he discovered the whereabouts of Olga Marie and the others. Looking at the time, the Conquest King should have already left. Saying that, Zhuge Kongming took out a cigar out of nowhere, put it in his mouth, and took a deep breath. Are you the only servants left on our side? Have the Hero King and the others all left? Zhuge Kongming asked. They are still in the Yuanzhong mountain. Looking at the current situation, I'm afraid that they are doomed. Olga Marie said in a heavy tone, looking at the destroyed Yuanzhong mountain from time to time. Then let's leave for now. We have to think about how to deal with Attila. If that guy catches up to us, we will all leave. This singularity is completely hopeless. It had to be said that Zhuge Kongming was worthy of being a military advisor. Even if his side was in a disadvantageous situation, he didn't show a trace of annoyance. Although Zhuge Kongming's words were indeed a wise choice, whether it was Stheno's group or Godatzi's group, none of them moved. Stheno and Uriali simply thought that Wu Ming wouldn't leave. Asterios only listened to Uriali's words. Anna and Sakura Madu were still unconscious, so Stheno and the others didn't move. Godatzi and Matthew didn't want to abandon their companions who might survive. Olga Marie was also worried about Wu Ming, so Godatzi and the others didn't show any signs of leaving. Zhuge Kongming held the cigar in one hand and sighed. I really don't know what to say to you. Zhuge Kongming shook his head. He's here. Zhuge Kongming suddenly said. As if reflecting Zhuge Kongming's words, a white figure walked out of the forest. Destruction. Attila said slowly, exuding a destructive aura, and walked toward Godatzi and the others. This powerful aura. Stheno couldn't help but look at Attila a few more times. Uriali and Asterios also looked serious. Matthew immediately held his shield in front of Godatzi. Matthew, who had drunk the recovery potion, had completely recovered. It had to be said that Wu Ming's potion was very effective. Stheno and the other servants were already in such a state, let alone Godatzi and Olga Marie, who were humans. Since that's the case, allow me to stall for time. After saying those words, Zhuge Kongming turned around. You guys take this opportunity to go to Yuanzhong Mountain and see what's going on. Zhuge Kongming walked toward Attila. Everyone was silent for a while. Without caring about the people behind him, Zhuge Kongming took a puff of the cigar, then held it in his hand. Speaking of which, this body's things are really good. Then, Zhuge Kongming condensed his magic, turned it into a white feather fan, and pointed it at Attila. This is the military advisor's ultimate position. Try to break it if you can. Karazuno Jin. Chapter 377. As Zhuge Kongming's voice fell, dark clouds appeared in the sky. Bam 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 bam. Along with 8 sonic booms, 8 huge 8 trigrams pillars fell from the sky. With Attila as the center, the 8 trigrams pillars fell in 8 directions around him. In an instant, an invisible force spread out, and Attila stopped in his tracks. A formation. Although Attila had been acting like a berserker and always wanted to destroy, he was still the king of the Hun Empire, the god's whip Attila who had conquered Europe. Attila had also dabbled in the military of the East. The unknown force of this formation did indeed stop Attila's footsteps. It's useless, destroy. Attila raised the war god's sword in his hand as he spoke. Suddenly, Zhuge Kongming's formation was broken. Have you forgotten my existence, Zhuge Liang? The blonde girl in an ancient robe rode a chariot not far from Attila. She was the rider, Sima Yi. She was the one who held Attila's command charm. On the other hand, Zhuge Kongming's Karazuno gene was countered by Sima Yi's primordial chaos array. Sima Yi, you really are a hindrance. Zhuge Kongming knew that Sima Yi was nearby, but he did not expect her to do the same as he did. Humph. Then you can return to the martyr's palace with peace of mind, Zhuge Liang. Sima Yi said provocatively. You should have sensed that our master has been defeated, and we are no longer restrained by him. Zhuge Kongming said calmly. You want to ask why I continue to follow orders, right? It's because you are here, Zhuge Liang. Sima Yi sneered. Even if I disappear and return to the martyr's palace, it was not easy to meet you in the Holy Grail War. The shame of the empty city stratagem will be washed away here. In the name of the command charm, Saber Attila, release your noble charm. Sima Yi raised her right hand, and one of the remaining 2 command charms on the back of her hand disappeared. Attila silently raised the war god's sword in his hand. Destruction. The war god's sword began to spin, emitting a rainbow light. Zhuge Kongming took a light puff of his cigar. He was ready to leave the stage. After all, the war god's sword was not something he could withstand. Clank! Suddenly, a shield appeared in front of Zhuge Kongming. Matthew raised his shield and prepared to block Attila's noble phantasm. Are you an idiot? His noble phantasm is the war god's sword. You're not mature enough yet, so you won't be able to block it. Zhuge Kongming shook his head helplessly. But we can't abandon our companions. Gudatzi walked to Zhuge Ming's side. Anyway, we're in the attack range of the opponent's noble phantasm. Since we can't escape, then let's not escape. Olga Marie crossed her arms and said proudly. I don't believe them, but that man. Stheno smiled. If it's that man, I'm sure he'll be able to save me in times of danger, just like Astelius. Euryale stroked Astelius's horn. Ah! That man? I'm looking forward to it as well. Zhuge Kongming took another puff of his cigar. With that, Attila swung the war god's sword, and a rainbow-colored stream of light rushed towards Gudatzi and the others. Matthew! Gudatzi shouted. Yes, senpai! Mashu inserted the shield into the ground. Lord Chaldea's, simulating the beginning of humanity. In an instant, a huge wall of chalk appeared, protecting everyone behind it. Boom! The colorful stream of light hit the holy chalk wall, and Matthew struggled to resist it. Ah! Her teeth were clenched, her body was trembling, but she didn't move. She was sweating profusely. All of these represented Mashu's difficulties at the moment. Thinking about Olga Marie's words, Gudatzi walked to Matthew and held his hand. Hang in there, Matthew. Block the enemy's noble phantasm. 2 of the 3 command charms on the back of Gudatzi's hand disappeared. Looking at Gudatzi's determined eyes and feeling the endless power that came from nowhere, Matthew smiled and nodded heavily. Ah! Along with Matthew's shout, the chalk wall became more real and complete, and the shape of the outer wall was faintly visible. Boom! The power of the war god's sword reached the end, leaving a regretful sound on the chalk wall that it did not break. The 7-colored radiance was blocked, and the god's whip was blocked by the holy chalk wall. How is it possible? Sima Yi looked at the shield that blocked the war god's sword in surprise. If that's the case, let's do it again, Sima Yi said, raising the back of his hand again. That's it. Suddenly Wu Ming's voice came. The sound of flesh being pierced by a sharp blade sounded, and Sima Yi's heart and soul core were pierced. Sima Yi spat out a mouthful of blood, looked at the platinum blade that went through his body, and turned to look at the assassin. I see, King Arthur lost. Sima Yi's body began to glow, and little blue particles were emitted from Sima Yi's body, which was a sign that he was about to leave. Damn it. What a pity. Zhuge Liang. Saying that, Sima Yi turned into magic and disappeared. Wu Ming put away the sword of salvation and looked at Attila. Destroy! Attila said, and ran toward Wu Ming. But in the process, Attila's body began to dissipate, and Attila was about to leave. Attila looked at Wu Ming's left hand and understood. I see, so the Holy Grail War is over. Wu Ming's left hand held a small golden cube that looked like a Holy Grail. It was the Holy Grail that Wu Ming defeated Artoria. Attila was forced to return to the martyr's palace. Attila, God's whip, it's time for you to go back. Go back to your martyr's palace and continue to dream. Wu Ming said something strange, and raised the Holy Grail. Attila did not say anything, and waited quietly. With Wu Ming's unknown manipulation, Attila's body instantly collapsed, and he turned into pure magic and disappeared. At this time, the holy chalk wall disappeared, revealing the faces of Gudazzi and the others. Assassin! Olga Marie and Gudazzi shouted in surprise. Senior assassin! Matthew was supported by Gudazzi, and he said weakly, but Matthew's voice was full of joy. That man is finally here. Stheno smiled. That's too slow, Euryale said. Cried Asterios, not knowing what was going on. He really came, but it's finally over. Zhuge Kongming breathed out a mouthful of smoke and relaxed. The chaotic Holy Grail War of the 21 Servants. Chapter 378. Indeed, out of the 22 servants, only 7 of us are left. Saver Wu Ming, Shielder Matthew, Assassin Stheno, Archer Euryale, Berserker Asterios, Lancer Anna, and Caster Zhuge Kongming. Wu Ming walked to the side of the crowd, holding a glowing golden Holy Grail in one hand. This glowing object is the Holy Grail that caused the chaos in this era. I temporarily used the Holy Grail to stabilize the singularity, so this singularity has not been repaired yet. In other words, you can control this singularity at will? Zhuge Kongming said lightly. Wu Ming became the guy who controlled this singularity. Zhuge Kongming meant that if Wu Ming wanted to, he could become the king of this era. Of course, not to mention Stheno and Euryale, even Gudazzi and the others didn't think that Wu Ming would choose to become the king of this singularity. Zhuge Kongming was not familiar with Wu Ming, so he deliberately said that. If Wu Ming didn't mean that, then everyone would be happy, and Zhuge Kongming would be relieved. If Wu Ming had such intentions, he was now the king of the singularity anyway. Zhuge Kongming did not have the ability to defeat Wu Ming, so there was no harm in saying a few words before he died. I'm not interested in becoming the king. You think too much, military counselor. Wu Ming shook his head lightly. Now looking at Wu Ming holding the Holy Grail, whether it was Olga, Marie, and the others, or Roman, who was projected on the screen, they were all relieved. After all, if Wu Ming really wanted to do that, they really couldn't do anything. That's great. Then our mission is complete. Roman had a lazy look on his face. You better cheer up, Roman. Even if all the enemies are destroyed, you can't be so lazy. Olga Marie instantly reprimanded Roman. Roman could only nod speechlessly. Yes. I know, Director. Did Mr. Cuculin and the others also leave? Matthew asked Wu Ming. Yes, whether it's Karna, Gilgamesh or Cuculin, they all left. Really? I haven't thanked them yet. Matthew said with some regret. Haha, don't worry, Matthew. You have already formed a destiny. And you will meet again. Wu Ming smiled and comforted Matthew. Yes, Assassin Senpai. Matthew's sorrow turned into joy and nodded with joy. By the way, where is Professor Lev? Gudazzi suddenly asked. Everyone then looked at Wu Ming. If it's Lev, he's dead on the surface. Wu Ming's words puzzled everyone. What did he mean by dead on the surface? I'll show you the image directly. With that, Wu Ming raised the Holy Grail, and instantly, the light shone brightly, drowning everyone. When everyone opened their eyes because it was too dazzling, the scene in front of them changed, from the forest at the foot of the mountain to a maze of tall pine trees and rocks. Is this an image? Olga Marie saw Wu Ming's trick and didn't panic. Image. Gudazzi scratched the back of her head. That's right, it's a projection. I've recreated the scene of my battle with Leviticus. After Silent Wonder finished speaking, a towering pillar appeared behind everyone. This thing is a demon god pillar, right? Zhuge Kongming looked indifferently at this huge pillar of flesh that was filled with eyes and said in detail, Demon god pillar. Roman was a little surprised. What's wrong, doctor? Matthew looked at Roman, who was unnatural on the screen. Nothing, I just learned about this thing through learning magic. I didn't expect the mythical product to reappear. Roman smiled slightly and quickly adjusted his state. However, Wu Ming glanced at him indifferently. As early as Wuming saw Roman for the first time, Wuming felt a little unnatural from Roman. Now that he had become a saver, Silent Cry saw through Roman's nature. This demon god pillar is the demon god Floros, the 72 demon gods under the command of the demon king Solomon. It appeared in the form of a demon god pillar. Wuming didn't say anything, but began to explain the origin of the demon god pillar. Demon King Solomon. Olga Marie looked at the pillar of flesh in distress, and couldn't help but suspect that the real mastermind behind the scenes was the heroic spirit Solomon. Immediately, Wuming's figure appeared in front of everyone, but Wuming's figure wasn't the current gold and white clothes, but the black windbreaker and black hat from before. Then, the demon god pillar began to release the demon mist to attack Wuming. However, everyone found that they couldn't hear the sound. At such a close distance, the sound of the demon god pillar is a little too strong for humans, so I omitted the sound. Wuming explained. Although Zhuge Kongming and Roman didn't seem to believe it, they didn't say anything. Wuming did this for a reason. The conversation between Wuming and the demon god pillar involved the issue of Wuming's identity. Gudatzi and the others had already suffered a lot, so Wuming felt that it was better to tell them later. Because Wuming omitted the scene of his conversation with Lev, Wuming had already used the inherent barrier. As the scene changed, everyone's surroundings turned into a foggy city. Ah, this is Assassin's inherent barrier. As someone who had been here before, Gudatzi explained to everyone. I know you've been here before. Take a good look. Olga Marie violently pressed Gudatzi's little head, and said rather unhappily, ouch, ouch, ouch. After that, the demon mist swallowed Wuming, and Wuming used the Holy Grail and command incantation to change his class. In the end, he used the sun, condensed from the Blade of Salvation to defeat Leviticus. After the projection ended, everyone returned to the foot of the Yuanzong mountain. Even if Lev had committed a heinous crime, he was still Chaldea's former companion, so Wuming didn't let them see the scene of Lev's body being burned to ashes by Wuming. Just like that, Lev died, but Floros didn't. Wuming shrugged. So that's how it is. Lev's apparent death means that the demon god pillar is still alive. Zhuge Kongming nodded. According to the demon god Floros, their demon god pillar is a whole, so I think Floros is still alive. Since demon god Floros is still alive, Lev is very likely not completely dead. After all, Lev is the personality of demon god Floros' human body. Wuming said solemnly. In other words, Olga Marie thought of something. In other words, we are likely to encounter Lev in our future operations. Roman said what Olga Marie was thinking. There's no other way. Romani, you're responsible for contacting the people of the Magic Association, and let them support us. Olga Marie said as if she was entrusting an orphan. Leader. It couldn't be helped. Even if they were comforted by Wuming, everyone still didn't think that Lev was lying when he said that Olga Marie was dead. The fact couldn't be changed, and Olga Marie had begun to accept it. At least, she had to do what she had to do while she was alive. Excuse me, even if Olga Marie can return to Chaldea, you can't contact the Magic Association in the outside world, because the world outside Chaldea has been completely burned. Chapter 379. What? Upon hearing Wuming's words, not only were Olga Marie and Roman shocked, but even Gudatzi and Matthew, who weren't nervous at all. You guys don't know? Wuming asked in a confused tone. How would we know? Hurry up and explain it to me. Olga Marie walked up to Wuming agitatedly and pulled on Wuming's collar. Ahem. Calm down, calm down. Wuming tried to break free from Olga Marie's grip, trying to calm her down. Leader, please calm down. Matthew pulled Olga Marie's arm and tried to calm her down. Olga Marie glanced at Matthew, calmed down, and let go of Wuming. Ahem. Let me explain. Wuming adjusted his collar and began to explain what he had just said. Just like Winterwood City, the world outside Chaldea has all been burned down. The reason why Chaldea detected that all humans were wiped out in 2018 is because all humans were burned down at that time. The mastermind behind this is what you think it is, the Magic King Solomon who controls the 72 demon gods. Stheno, Euryale, and Anna brought Sakura Madu and Asterios to stand behind Chaldea's group. This was related to Gudatzi and the others, so as servants, it was better for them to step back and listen. If that's the case, I guess the world outside this city has also become a sea of fire. Zhuge Kongming lit up another cigar and explained in detail. After all, as a wise man, Zhuge Kongming and Chaldea's group listened to Wu Ming's explanation in the front row. Zhuge Kongming is correct. That's because this great fire started in the era of Kanagawa and continued all the way to the year 2018, which is when all of humanity was destroyed. The reason there was a delay is because Chaldea still exists. The reason why Chaldea is fine is because of the influence of its own magnetic field, which preserved the hair color of Chaldea. No wonder we couldn't contact the Magic Association, and no wonder none of the people sent to the Magic Association came back or contacted Chaldea. It's not that there's a problem with the equipment, but that the people sent were all burned. Roman said thoughtfully. That's right. Other than Winterwood City, there are 7 new singularities in history. Roman, go check Sheba and see if I'm right. Wu Ming then revealed another shocking piece of information. Excuse me for a moment. With that said, Roman's figure disappeared from the screen. After about 10 seconds, Roman's figure reappeared on the screen. Assassin is right. The singularities shown on Sheba didn't disappear. Instead, there are 7 new singularities. However, we can't analyze the locations of the singularities, so we don't know where they are, Roman said seriously. Romani, analyze the positions of the 7 singularities immediately. Olga Marie ordered, and Romani hurriedly went to carry out the task. Yes, Director. However, Roman didn't turn off the screen. Instead, he turned it on and analyzed the singularities with the rest of Chaldea's staff. 7 singularities. Without any backup. Olga Marie bit her nails and thought about Wu Ming's words with a headache. She was also worried about Chaldea's future. No one chose to doubt Wu Ming's words. Roman found evidence on Sheba, and it clearly showed that there were 7 singularities. What's wrong? Are you scared by just 7 singularities? Wu Ming mocked. Gudatzi and Matthew were a little surprised. After all, Wu Ming wasn't the kind of person who would mock his companions. Olga Marie was like a barrel of dynamite. She would explode at the slightest provocation. She angrily refuted Wu Ming. Needless to say, Olga Marie's provocation worked very well. You bastard. Who's scared? It's just 7 singularities. I'll let Tachika and Matthew fix it for you. What about you two? Wu Ming looked at Matthew and Gudatzi. I'll do whatever Senior says. Matthew looked at Gudatzi with trust. Seeing Matthew like this, Gudatzi was touched. I'll take Matthew to open the 7 singularities. We definitely will, Gudatzi said energetically. Wu Ming smiled. In that case, I have nothing to worry about. Then, it's time for us to return to the Martyr's Palace, Zhuge Kongming said, looking at Wu Ming. After the Holy Grail War ended, Attila returned to the Martyr's Palace, but Zhuge Kongming, Stheno, and the others still wouldn't return to the Martyr's Palace. Without a doubt, this was Wu Ming's doing. Returning to the Martyr's Palace after the Holy Grail War ended? By the way, when did it end? Gudatzi was indeed a newcomer. She really didn't understand at all. The Holy Grail War ended. The surviving Martyr's Palace, of course, will return to the Martyr's Palace. The Holy Grail War ended after Wu Ming defeated King Arthur and obtained the Holy Grail, Olga Marie said helplessly. Is that so? Heh. Gudatzi smiled awkwardly. As expected of Zhuge Kongming, Wu Ming praised Zhuge Kongming. Then, Wu Ming raised the Holy Grail. The moment it lit up, Zhuge Kongming, Stheno, and the others' bodies began to glow. Then, summon me when you need me, the last master of Chaldea. Zhuge Kongming finished speaking and disappeared into blue magic particles. Goodbye, Master of Chaldea. Stheno smiled. I hope you won't be so rude the next time we meet. Urieli also smiled, but this sentence was directed at Wu Ming. I apologize for my rudeness. Wu Ming was speechless. Sister Anna, are you leaving? Sakura Madu looked at Anna and said reluctantly. Yeah. Anna only hummed softly. She still didn't like talking to humans, even if it was her master. However, Anna was smiling. She was glad to have such a master. Then, goodbye, Sister Anna. Thank you for saving me. Sakura Madu smiled and waved at Anna. Then, Anna disappeared in silence. On the other hand, Astrilius disappeared without saying anything. Then Tachika and Matthew quickly retrieved the Holy Grail and returned to Chaldea. Roman, are you ready for the ray shift? Olga Marie saw that all the servants had left and said to Roman. The preparations were done a few minutes ago, but Roman showed a sad expression. Gudotsi and Matthew were the same. Ah, death, I know. What Lev said was true. Now that I think about it, I did die in the explosion of Chaldea. Olga Marie said in a confused tone. Didn't I say that I wouldn't let Olga Marie die? Wuming suddenly said. Gudotsi, Matthew, Roman, and even Olga Marie were shocked. You didn't say that. Chapter 380. Even if Olga Marie can return to Chaldea, that's what I said. Wuming smiled. This left everyone dumbfounded. I thought you were just making an analogy. Roman smiled shyly. That. Assassin, can you really save the director? Gudotsi asked excitedly. Of course, Olga Marie is my master. The Grim Reaper doesn't have the guts to take my master's life from my hands, Wuming said domineeringly. That's great, director. You don't have to die. Matthew said happily. Haha. Why do I feel that this sentence is particularly strange? Olga Marie laughed. Although Wuming said that Olga Marie was his master, Olga Marie had already noticed when Wuming changed his class. Her contract with Wuming was broken. This was why Olga Marie was so nervous at the foot of Yuzong Mountain. Olga Marie thought that Wuming had left. Assassin had indeed left. Wuming was now Savor's savior. Olga Marie and Wuming both knew this, but they didn't reveal it. So, Assassin, how are you going to save the director? Roman asked. When Roman said this, not only were Gudotsi and Matthew curious, even Olga Marie was quite curious. You may not know this, but I can make puppets. Wuming smiled and began to answer. Puppets? Everyone was confused. Are you talking about those wooden puppets? Gudotsi raised her small hand and asked. No matter how you think about it, it's impossible. Matthew complained. It's like this, Wuming said. The golden ripple opened, and a figure was taken out by Wuming. Why was he taking it out? Because it was a puppet. Is this really a doll? Roman said in disbelief. The others were also stunned. A handsome man with golden hair and fair skin appeared in front of everyone. He was wearing an ancient white robe and had his eyes closed. That's right, this was the male version of Gilgamesh that Wuming had made in Uruk. Isn't this a real person? Are you sure you didn't kidnap her from that place? Olga Marie couldn't believe it. Everyone nodded. They couldn't tell that it was a puppet at all. I knew you guys would say that. Wuming smiled. Then, he raised his hand and reached into the blonde man's robe. Rip! Following the sound of skin tearing, Wuming stretched out his hand and a complete piece of human skin appeared in Wuming's hand. Olga, Marie, and the others were startled, retreating in fear. Then, Wuming lifted up the blonde man's shirt. A complete piece of skin was missing from the abdomen of the doll, revealing the internal structure. Countless mechanical parts were placed in the blonde man's abdomen, proving that this was a mechanical doll. This really is a mechanical doll. Although Roman was from the medical department, he was also a little involved in other aspects. Naturally, he could tell that this was a doll, not a human. Do you still need to look at the brain? Wuming smiled kindly. No, I don't think so. Mashu smiled awkwardly. Gudotsi, Olga, and Marie also nodded. Of course, this is only a semi-finished product. I didn't replace the internal organs. I only made it to control its movements by projecting my mind into it. With that said, Wuming opened another golden ripple. This time, a person that looked exactly like the previous doll came out. As for this doll, it's my finished product. Be it its internal structure, sensory nerves, or magic circuits, they're all top-notch. The materials were all synthesized by me using rare magic plants and rare magic ores, the golden-haired doll said as it walked around before stopping. Putting a spirit into a body like this is no problem at all. His consciousness returned from the blonde doll to the servant's body. Wu Ming patted the motionless doll and praised it. Say, if there is no other way, creating a body like this would be fine. Olga Marie said rather helplessly. After all, who would want to die for no reason if they could live? But I'm not going to create a body for Olga Marie. Wu Ming suddenly said. Do you want me to use this body? Olga Marie was scared. Of course not. Wu Ming shook his head and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. After that, Olga Marie was relieved. Gudatsi, Matthew, and Roman were also relieved. I'm going to use this, Wu Ming said as he took out a cup from the golden ripple. Its shape was very similar to the Holy Grail. Is this the reaction of the Holy Grail? Roman looked at the data on the display and said with some surprise. Of course, that wasn't the Holy Grail that Wu Ming took from Gilgamesh's treasure house. That Holy Grail had turned into magic power and integrated into Wu Ming's Saver spirit base. This is the Holy Grail I got in another parallel world, and this Holy Grail has been made a wish. After that, I slightly modified it. Wu Ming smiled. Have you heard of Heaven's Feel? Wu Ming asked. Could it be? Roman looked scared. The third method. Olga Marie continued Roman's words. The third method? Matthew was slightly surprised. What is the third method? Gudatsi said that she didn't know anything. The materialization of the soul is not something that can be done by human beings. It's a higher level than magic. It's called magic, and the materialization of the soul is the third method. Olga Marie explained Heaven's Feel. Oh! It feels so strong. Gudatsi's face was full of surprise. This Holy Grail was made a wish by a somewhat extreme saint. The wish was to materialize the souls of all human beings in the world. Wu Ming said. How is that possible? Even the Holy Grail can't materialize the souls of all human beings in the world. That's the product of the third method. Roman said with some surprise. If the Holy Grail was really that omnipotent, then Lev just needed to make a wish to exterminate human beings. If the Holy Grail was really that omnipotent, then the crisis in Winterwood City would affect the whole world. Of course, that saint has other ways to cheat. If we let it go, it may really materialize the souls of all human beings in that world. Wu Ming didn't elaborate, then looked at Olga Marie. Through my modification, this activated Holy Grail can no longer affect the surroundings. I decided to let Olga Marie take this Holy Grail and materialize the souls. Wu Ming's sentence completely surprised everyone. Hey! Chapter 381. Legend has it that the 5 great spells in the world could only be inherited by 5 people. As long as someone inherited one of the great spells, then the others would not be able to inherit that inherited spell. The previous successor of the first spell had died, and his descendants were said to be under the protection of the Magic Association. The second spell belonged to the Marshal of the Demonic Path, known as the Gemstone Man, Kixia Zelik Zayubian Ogu, who was also Wu Ming's old friend. The user of the third spell had died long ago. The House of Einstein Barons, one of the 3 families who developed the Holy Grail War ritual, were the descendants of the user of the third spell. The Holy Grail War could be said to be an incomplete third spell. The existence of the fourth spell was acknowledged by the users of the other spells, but what it was itself was still a mystery. The user of the fifth spell was the Aozaki family, and the current head of the family was Aozaki Aoko. It was said that the fifth spell was hidden in the magic seals passed down from generation to generation in the Aozaki family. Not to mention whether the 5 great spells were strong or not, they were definitely rare. Among the known users of the fifth spell, Zelik and Aozaki Aoko could be said to be very powerful figures. Although Aozaki Aoko had not Wu Ming before, Zelik Wu Ming had seen a lot of them. Using the second method, Zelrich merged all the versions of himself from the parallel worlds and maintained his uniqueness. He also had the legendary battle record of defeating the Moon King. Although he was turned into a death apostle by the Moon King, he was still impressive. Although Aozaki Aoko was unknown, she was still active in the magic world with the fifth spell, which was enough to show her strength. This showed how powerful magic was, and the abilities related to magic were also incomparably powerful. Because Wu Ming said that he wanted Olga Mary to hold the Holy Grail that released the third spell, and let Olga Mary's soul, as a spirit, materialize. Naturally, Everyone was quite surprised. Don't be so surprised. Although Olga Mary's soul will materialize, that is only the result of relying on the third spell, the Holy Grail. Once it leaves the Holy Grail, Olga Mary will become a spirit again. Wu Ming's words calmed everyone down. To put it simply, the Holy Grail was the spirit behind this human, who had no consciousness. It was entrusted to the Holy Grail and maintained its own life. But even so, there is no limit to the number of things that are related to magic. Roman had an envious expression on his face. Romani, what's with that expression? It's disgusting. Olga Marie used her poisonous tongue again. Roman is right. If Olga Marie has the ability, it's very likely that she'll be able to master the third magic spell. At that time, not only will Olga Marie be able to leave the Holy Grail and truly live on, she'll also be respected and feared in the magic world. The Animusphia family will also become a family of magic users. Wu Ming's last words made Olga Marie's eyes brighten. That's right, what's the point of working so hard? Isn't it just to inherit the family, not to embarrass my father, complete the protection of human rights, and promote the Animusphia family? Now that the opportunity was right in front of him, why should he hesitate? What do you think, Master? Do you accept my suggestion? Wu Ming smiled at Olga Marie. Although it was a question, Wu Ming could already see that Olga Marie was quite moved. I don't want to choose the materialization of the soul. It's just that I hate puppets. She spoke with incomparable pride. Yes, I understand. Then let's not delay any longer. Let's start now. Then Gudatzi and Matthew stepped back, leaving an empty space for Wu Ming and Olga Marie. Olga Marie stood nervously in place, looking at Wu Ming in front of her, and swallowed her saliva. Wu Ming raised the materialized Holy Grail in his left hand, and raised it in front of himself. Then the Holy Grail flew up, and came to Olga Marie's front, and without a pause, it merged into Olga Marie's body. That's it. On the screen, Roman shouted in disbelief. Be quiet, Roman. Olga Marie angrily glared at Roman. But, this is the third method. How can a Holy Grail that merged with a third method be so casual? Please calm down, Doctor. Matthew awkwardly smiled, although he was also very curious. Actually, I also thought there would be some kind of light that broke through the sky. Gudatzi whispered. Not to mention that Gudatzi and the others were so surprised. Olga Marie naturally needless to say, but she didn't ask. But unfortunately, it's that simple. Did you think there would be any supernatural phenomenon? Wu Ming shrugged, looking helpless. Olga Marie touched the place where the Holy Grail merged into her body and couldn't help but say, but I really don't feel anything. Did my soul really materialize? Olga Marie asked. It's not that simple. Wu Ming shook his head, walked in front of Olga Marie, and then put his hand on Olga Marie's chest. Ignoring the stunned Olga Marie, as well as the stunned Gudatzi, Matthew, and Roman, Wu Ming continued. Now you're just a soul that relies on the Holy Grail, because the third method was limited by me, so you're now receiving the incomplete version of the third method, and the effect is only to maintain you and not dissipate when you return to Chaldea. Saying so, Wu Ming's hand on Olga Marie's chest suddenly lit up, and the Holy Grail in Olga Marie's body seemed to have sensed it, and through Olga Marie's body, it appeared at Olga Marie's heart. Like a real heart, the Holy Grail kept beating, and a burst of magic poured out of the Holy Grail like spring water, nourishing Olga Marie's somewhat weak soul. Let's leave it at that for now. As long as the Holy Grail exists, Olga Marie will be an immortal existence. Wu Ming calmly said something that many people longed for. I say, you should have touched enough. Olga Marie lowered her head, and her bangs covered her face, so that Wu Ming couldn't see her clearly. However, from her tone, there was a trace of murderous intent. It's about time. Saying so, Wu Ming moved his hand that was pressed against Olga Marie's chest. By the way, Olga Marie, you're quite something. Wu Ming looked at Olga Marie with a smile. Slap. Wu Ming let go of the hand on Olga Marie's chest, and grabbed Olga Marie's hand that was slapping his cheek. Looking at Olga Marie's shy and angry face, Wu Ming calmly smiled. Well, just kidding, just kidding. Wu Ming let go of the hand, and quickly pushed it away, leaving Olga Marie standing there with her arms crossed in shame. You remember. Olga Marie gnashed her teeth, and said with shame and anger. In that case, I'll help you summon a servant for free. Chapter 382. Wu Ming's words surprised everyone. Summon a servant? Everyone was surprised. After all, I can't follow you back to Chaldea. I still have my mission. But it's not just Winterwood City that's burning. Wu Ming's words made everyone silent. Yes, there were 7 other singularities. If I'm not by your side, let Olga Marie's personal servant number 2 protect you. Olga Marie's personal servant. Number 2. For this strange title, Gudatzi and Matthew couldn't help but repeat it. I don't need a second servant. My only servant is you. Olga Marie directly rejected Wu Ming's proposal. The atmosphere at the scene became somewhat depressing. You know, you're the director of Chaldea. Matthew is Tachika's master. He can't protect you all the time. And I have other missions. I can't stay by your side. Wu Ming persuaded Olga Marie. Leader, I think Assassin is right. If you return, as the backbone of the organization, you will need a bodyguard, Roman tried to persuade him. Roman didn't dare to tell the other Chaldea employees that Olga Marie had died. Chaldea employees were also very relieved because the director was personally carrying out the mission in the singularity. Chaldea employees knew that there were still 7 singularities, and that all the humans outside had been burned. Almost everyone had a trace of abnormality. Fortunately, the director is still here. That's right, that's right. The director can solve any problem perfectly. With the director around, there will be no problem. Although it was basically Lev who helped. Well, let's work hard and clear the 7 singularities together. This was the conversation of less than 20 employees. It had to be said that Olga Marie was indeed quite dignified in Chaldea. She could be regarded as the spiritual support of the remaining employees. Olga Marie looked at Roman, and then looked at Gudatzi and Matthew, who nodded at her. She made a decision. All right, I'll take your advice. For once, Olga Marie wasn't so proud. Wu Ming smiled. Then, let's get ready. Although Yuanzhong Mountain had exploded, the spirit veins beneath it weren't affected much. Wu Ming and the others arrived at the ruins of the Yuanzhong Mountain, which was a basin filled with piles of broken rocks. Due to the clash between Wu Ming and Artoria's noble phantasms, there was a huge hole in the middle of the Yuanzhong Mountain. From the side, it looked like the Yuanzhong Mountain had disappeared. Looking from above, it looked like a basin surrounded by mountains. But because of Shitendaji's noble artifact, this large hole had turned into a poisonous hole. Splash! The sound of flowing water was heard. Countless streams of water flowed into the basin from unknown places. However, the strange thing was that the poison did not corrode the water flow. Instead, it slowly retreated as if it was afraid. If one took a closer look, the water was dark red in color. Soon, the water enveloped the entire basin. Vanish. As Wu Ming's voice came, countless streams of water seemed to have reached the boiling point and began to boil. Countless purple smoke evaporated from the boiling red water flow, and the moment it touched the air, it turned into pure magical power and dissipated. Walala! The sound of flowing water was heard again, but this time, there was no water flowing in. It was the boiling water that existed in the cave that flowed out. The scene changed. Countless streams of water flowed back to Wu Ming's palm, and Wu Ming's palm was like a bottomless pit, endlessly absorbing the water flow. Until the last trace of water disappeared. It's done. I've purified Shitendaji's poison. Wu Ming turned around and said to everyone behind him. Wu Ming just activated his flood and annihilation avatars, and the water of destruction completely eliminated Shitendaji's poison. By the way, Assassin, you're no longer Assassin, right? Looking at Wu Ming's series of actions, Gudatzi said thoughtfully. Roman and Matthew also nodded. After all, the supernatural ability just now was definitely not something an assassin could do. I can't detect Assassin's current class either. Roman was a little puzzled. For some reason, the instrument couldn't detect Wu Ming's current class. My current class is Saver, Savior. Wu Ming answered everyone's doubts. Saver. Savior? I've never heard of that before. Roman shook his head. Maybe it's because my current class is a class that no one has ever held before, at least for now. Wu Ming explained. Ming really didn't know who had held the Savior class, so he said for now. Although I don't know anything, it's still amazing. Gudotsi touched the back of her head awkwardly. I use this class to deal with my enemies, and there are very few servants who can hold the Savior class. Chaldea's system probably didn't record this class information. Then Ming acted. Let's not talk about this for now, let's summon the servants. Everyone didn't think about it anymore and followed Ming into the big hole. As soon as they entered the big hole, they found that nothing happened here. The ground was clean, as if the previous battle was just a dream. I used my water to clean this place. Ming explained. Then, Ming felt the magic power of the earth, seemingly casually walked to a place and squatted down. Just when everyone was wondering what Ming was doing, suddenly, a magic circle appeared under Ming's feet. This is a magic circle used to summon servants. You should know how to use it. Ming walked out of the magic circle and looked at Olga Marie. In short, Ming asked Olga Marie if she could chant the spell. Of course, I have no problem. I saw the summoning spell in Chaldea. Olga Marie said and walked to the front of the magic circle. Declare. Thy body is under me. My fate is in thy sword. Then, Olga Marie raised her right hand without the command seal. At the same time, the magic circle began to emit a violent magic power. Leader, you don't want to directly summon a servant, do you? Roman was a little dumbfounded. Without a lot of preparation for the summoning ritual, especially without a holy relic, the success rate is very low. Even Chaldea only summoned 3 servants, and Galahad was one of them. Rest assured, this is a summoning circle that I have strengthened. Even if it drags, a servant will be pulled out from the Hall of Valhalla. Ming said with confidence. Moreover, without a holy relic, it depends on the compatibility between the servant and the master. I believe that such a servant will be able to bear the burden of becoming Olga Marie's servant. Looking at Ming, who seemed to be very reasonable, Gudotsi and Matthew nodded thoughtfully. Even Roman was in a state of thinking. The compatibility between the master and the servant. At this time, Olga Marie's summoning spell came to an end. Entangle the 3 spirits of words for 7 days. Come from the wheel of inhibition, guardian of the Libra. Bang! As if something fell to the ground, the magic reached the maximum value and suddenly exploded, causing a lot of smoke. Vaguely, everyone saw a petite figure in the smoke. So you're my master. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.